Hey, so apparently all of the Lord of the Rings movies have some deleted scenes that we haven't ever heard of or ever seen before. And I'm not talking about just the extended edition scenes. We've all seen those by now. If you're a true fan, you know you've watched them like 10 times already. But I'm talking about stuff that didn't even make the cut that maybe one day we could see on like a 25th anniversary edition. Jackson, give us that 25th anniversary edition of the extended cut. Everybody will buy it, I guarantee. Anyways, so I'm going to watch this with you guys and we're going to take our thoughts on what's going on.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy is packed with incredible moments, but did you know that there are tons of deleted scenes and unused material that never made it into any version of the films, not even the extended editions? In this video, we're counting down the top 10 most fascinating and impactful deleted scenes, moments that have never seen the light of day. And who knows, maybe one...
Hold on. Maybe they can do quality a little bit better. Premium. We'll do... doesn't let us got paid to do premium.
Second extended release. So let's get straight into it. First up, we have a scene, or more specifically, a character that was completely omitted from the Fellowship of the Rings prologue. That entire
Tom Bombadil. He was taken out, but like Tom Bombadil.
Entire section went through multiple revisions with plenty of content cut, but arguably the biggest removal was the elven
Gil-galad.
Gil-galad. While he does make a brief appearance.
Is that the guy from Rings of Power? The same
biggest
actor?
Removal was the elven.
Yo, it looks just like the guy from Rings of Power. Is it the same actor? Does anybody know that? Even though he got cut? Does anybody know the answer to that?
King Gil-galad. While he does make a brief appearance, striking down an orc and standing among the elves who received the Rings of Power, his role was originally much more significant. In earlier versions of the prologue, he was mentioned by name multiple times, with narration stating that he marched alongside Elrond and Elendil and was ultimately slain by Sauron.
Oh, that would have been cool to see.
Death scene, which would have been a brutal and book-accurate moment.
Why? You could have put that in the extended cut. That would have been great.
Sauron lifting Gil-galad and burning him alive with the heat of his hand. Actor Mark Ferguson, who portrayed Gil-galad, has said he was surprised that his character was cut almost entirely.
Of course, at the beginning I thought, there's no way I could be cut out. I'm central to the plot, really. Having, by being the only one who was going to go head-to-head with Sauron, and it's while that battle is happening.
He's got his shield and everything. One of the only true, for all you Lothlorien nerds, one of the only true wardens, elf wardens.
Not a major character, only to have him fall just as quickly might have felt redundant. Instead, the filmmakers shifted the focus to Elrond, who plays a major role throughout all three films. Still, for fans of the books, it's a shame that such an important figure was reduced to a brief cameo, and that we never got to see his epic final confrontation with Sauron. Next up, we have a section from the Fellowship of the Ring that was heavily trimmed in both the theatrical and extended editions. Originally, the sequence between Moria and the Fellowship's arrival in Lothlorien was meant to be much longer, featuring an internal conflict among the group. As they emerged from the mines, tensions would rise over what to do next, some questioning whether entering Lorien is a wise choice, given its dangers and the mysterious
supposed to be a scene with the goblins.
On top of that, the Fellowship was originally going to be pursued by goblins, not
they came out, but that's how the book was.
Moria,
they did
but
come
deep
out
into the forest itself.
Moria.
This would have led to a dramatic introduction of the elves of Lorien as a sudden volley of arrows rained down, wiping out the goblins in an instant. A lot of footage was actually filmed for this, including shots of goblins lying dead on the forest floor after the ambush. I personally would have loved to see at least some of this remain in the final cut. Getting more goblin versus elf action would have been a real treat. But ultimately, the filmmakers chose to streamline the story, skipping ahead to the moment when the Fellowship is captured and brought into Lothlorien.
Extended cut, still calling her name.
From the two towers was actually Eowyn fighting in the Glittering Caves. Originally, she was meant to assist a woman giving birth, the same woman who was reunited with her children earlier in the film. This explains why her hands would have been bloodied before the Uruks even entered the caves. Once the Uruks broke in, Eowyn would have fought fiercely, killing several of them, even decapitating some.
Yo, they made like a whole set and everything, and we barely saw any of that. Like for just brief moments of them like huddling up, but They got a whole fighting scene. Why put it in extended cut?
All while wearing nothing but a dress and wielding her sword. There are probably a few reasons why this scene was cut. First, it might have been confusing for the...
It's because of the sexism. No, it's probably, I don't know, maybe they just look weird that she's wearing a dress and stuff and fighting. Or it might be, actually in the books, Gimli goes in and helps defend the Glimmering Caves. That would have been cool to see.
The audience, as the film gives the impression that the glittering
do we see that scene in the movie? I think
caves
we do.
Are a last refuge, never breached by the Uruks. More importantly, it would have diminished her arc in Return of the King.
Nah,
her eventual stand at
Minas Tirith
is a powerful moment, built up over nearly a movie and a half, as she struggles with her desire to fight, but is repeatedly denied the opportunity.
I guess I kind of see what they mean.
If she had already slaughtered Uruks in the Two Towers, her confrontation with the Witch King wouldn't have carried the same weight. Ultimately, while the scene sounds exciting, its removal strengthens Eowyn's journey
I guess
and
it does make sense.
In Return of the King more impactful. The next scene comes from the Two Towers, though unfortunately very little footage of it has surfaced. According to the director's commentary, a lengthy flashback was filmed showing a young Aragorn and Arwen meeting for the first time.
Who did they play?
To emphasize Aragorn's youth, he was clean-shaven without his usual stubble.
Or did they just keep Viggo Mortensen and use him? And because de-aging technology, I don't think was that great back then. Huh. Interesting. Maybe they only got the concept art.
Making him look noticeably different from the rugged ranger we see throughout the trilogy. Despite the scene being fully shot, it was ultimately left out of the final cut and very little of it has been released. The only real glimpse we have is a brief frame from one of the movie's trailers, hinting at what could have been. While it would have been interesting to see more...
Trailers have like scenes in them that didn't even go onto the film or the extended cuts. Then that tells me that these scenes are already kind of ready to be put in. Again, the 25th anniversary extended cut needs to come out. We're begging ya.
Aragorn and Arwen's early relationship, giving additional weight to the romance, I can understand why it was removed. The Two Towers already juggles multiple storylines, and adding a lengthy flashback might have disrupted the pacing. Still, I would have loved to see this moment included, even if just as a part of the extended edition. Who knows, maybe this is something we could potentially see in the hunt for Gollum if they decide to get more into Aragorn's past. Next up, we have a scene from Lothlorien that would have added a bit more depth to the story of the elves. In this sequence, both Elrond and Arwen travel to...
I've heard that a lot of Lorien scenes were filmed that got removed. Like, the most out of every scene, everything that they filmed. I've heard that from somewhere else before.
Lothlorien to seek Galadriel's counsel regarding Arwen's future, such as whether she should remain in Middle-earth or not. At the same time, a council of elves takes place, in which Elrond participates. This meeting ultimately leads to the decision to send elven reinforcements to the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah, that would have been nice to see,
from
actually.
The final film, we know it existed thanks to confirmed lines from the Two Towers photo guide and visual companion, as well as glimpses of it in the trailers. First of all, we have a line from Galadriel where she says, "The rings of all elf lords were not made as weapons of war or conquest, they cannot come to the aid of man." With Celeborn responding with, "We have seen too many defeats, too many fruitless victories, to trust again the strength of man." And then Elrond responding with,
"If we do not trust the strength of men, then we trust to the victory of Sauron."
As you can see, the elves' arrival at Helm's Deep was meant to have a much larger build-up, with additional scenes setting the stage for their involvement in the battle. While cutting these moments made their entrance more of a surprise, it also meant losing some fascinating details about the role. But it wasn't just their arrival that changed. Arwen was originally set to lead the elven reinforcements at Helm's Deep. Her presence in the battle was completely removed, marking a major shift from earlier versions
that she was
going to
be in it.
So why was she cut, and what would her role have looked like? We'll dive into all of that later.
Imagine Eowyn being there at the same time Arwen's there, and like she's fine, and then later on in the Return of the King, she still tries to riz Aragorn. Yeah, then everybody would have labeled her a hoe, a straight up hoe, because by that point she already met like who he's trying to marry. So that would have created so many problems if she was there. Not only not being lore accurate, but also that plot hole too.
Next up, we have a fairly unknown bonus deleted scene from The
Why
Hobbit,
does that look
actually.
good?
Partying with the dwarves in Bag End.
What the crap? This guy's nuts. Oh, it's a sponsored thing. I like this edit though. Very good edit.
But let me tell you, it wasn't as fun as it
Skip
might
through
look.
this.
All I wanted to do after a while, check them out using the link in the description below. Now back to another deleted scene involving Arwen. This one directly tied to the Elven Council meeting we mentioned earlier, because Arwen's storyline underwent some of the most significant changes in the trilogy, with numerous scenes either being altered or removed entirely. The biggest chunk of deleted material featuring her actually comes from Helm's Deep. There are both actual movie shots that were cut and behind the scenes footage of
That
her
whole
fighting
time, wait,
Uruk-hai.
go back.
Her actually comes from Helm's Deep. There are both actual
His face, right here.
movie shots that were cut and
It just looks like he knows. He's like talking to her, but he knows that he's like, we're probably gonna cut your parts out of this and make you be completely invisible, and all the scenes you did are gonna be worthless. So just go ahead and tell me whatever you want. And she's like not sure that that's what he's gonna do, but that's what his facial expressions are telling me.
behind the scenes footage of her fighting Uruk-hai. In fact, there's even a moment in the final cut of the Two Towers, right when the defenders retreat from the outer wall, where she was originally present. While she
Where?
was digitally removed from the main shot, if you look carefully
That's
in the background, you can still
crazy.
spot her running. It's possible the filmmakers either assumed no
How do
one
you
would
do
notice,
that?
or simply forgot to paint her out
How do they
completely.
see it
Arwen
from all
was
the way up
originally
there,
meant to
though?
lead the elves at
Gotta
Helm's
be
Deep and was
crazy
filmed in
zooming in.
several key battle scenes before being replaced by Haldir. For example, the moment where Aragorn runs up the stairs to save Haldir was originally shot with him running up to Arwen instead. Likewise, the scene where Legolas pulls Gimli and Aragorn up with a rope was also filmed with Arwen, though Orlando Bloom later suggested she was likely painted out in post-production. Even in the final charge where the riders storm out of the keep, she was meant to be on a white horse, but that too was digitally altered. Overall, a significant amount of material from Helm's Deep and Arwen's storyline in general was cut. The exact reasons aren't entirely clear, but there are several semi-confirmed explanations. One is that Liv Tyler may not have been the most comfortable filming fight scenes, and they weren't very happy with how the scenes turned out. But more importantly, the filmmakers also realized during production that Arwen wasn't
So
meant to be
basically
portrayed
just saying,
as a
oh, you
warrior
sucked at
princess,
fighting.
and her role was better suited elsewhere in the story. Next up, we have a fairly iconic deleted scene from the Two Towers, one that many
What
of
in
you
the
may already have
world?
seen. Frodo as Gollum. While this scene was cut from all versions of the film, a surprising amount of effort went into creating it.
It's
Elijah
crazy.
Wood underwent an extensive makeup transformation to resemble a twisted Gollum-like version of Frodo.
That just looks like any crackhead on the streets, to be honest. Like, I see those type of people around my city all the time. They didn't need the makeup or prosthetics to do this scene. They could have just hired one of them temporarily. I'm joking, but at the same time, I'm not.
Frodo with a haunting and unsettling appearance. The idea was for Faramir to briefly glimpse Frodo in this horrifying state at the moment when Frodo snaps at him, adding even more doubt to Faramir's decision about whether to let Frodo and Sam continue their journey. What's particularly interesting is that they achieved this transformation entirely through practical makeup, whereas the real Gollum was fully CGI. It makes sense though, since Frodo would still be fully clothed. Applying prosthetics to his face was a more practical approach than CGI. It's somewhat similar to how they portrayed Gollum's transformation in The Return of the King prologue. During that sequence, Andy Serkis actually wore makeup to depict his gradual corruption.
That don't look like
before
makeup.
fully transitioning into the CGI Gollum that we see throughout the rest of the films. While the scene was meant to be more of a symbolic vision, a glimpse of what Frodo could become, it might have felt too literal. Ultimately, while it's a fascinating concept, I think removing it was
Put it in the
probably
extended
right
cut.
call.
We'll like
One
it.
of the biggest deleted scenes from The Return of the King involves
This
Sauron
is the
actually
one that
appearing.
I think it was a mistake, because they didn't ever because Sauron is a physical being, it's semi. He's like Gandalf, one of the Maiar, and he just in the whole film he just says I the whole time, and like he just stays behind the wall, which is granted in the books he's like that too, but this would have been cool to show like the big bad at the end. Please put this somewhere. Clean it up.
At the Black Gate. There are multiple versions of this concept, which makes it a bit confusing. In one version he appears in his angelic Anatar form, radiating blinding light that affects everyone except Aragorn. In another version, he physically manifests in his full armor. The armored version of Sauron was meant to engage Aragorn in a one-on-one sword fight. Some of the shots of this battle were later repurposed, with Sauron being replaced by the armored troll that Aragorn fights in the final cut of the film. Storyboard images also depict Aragorn stabbing Sauron, but with little effect. Ultimately, once the ring is destroyed, Sauron's physical form would have exploded in front of everyone. Cool. However, Sauron's appearance at the Black Gate is a controversial idea. The movie strongly suggests that he cannot take physical form without the ring, so having him suddenly manifest in the battle would have felt inconsistent with the established narrative. That said, the books do indicate that Sauron had a physical form during the events of the Lord of the Rings. Gollum describes seeing a figure with a black hand with 4 fingers, implying that Sauron had regained a corporal body, though it was likely weakened and incomplete without the ring. Even so, Tolkien never depicts Sauron appearing openly on the battlefield, instead keeping him a looming distant threat. Introducing him at the Black Gate would have been a significant departure from his portrayal. Ultimately, while an on-screen confrontation with Sauron would have been visually striking, cutting the scene was likely the right decision to preserve the mystery and tension surrounding his character. As mentioned earlier in the video, the prologue of the Fellowship of the Ring went through numerous changes and cuts. One major scene that was planned but ultimately removed depicted Sauron forging the One Ring. According to the storyboards, the scene would have shown Sauron holding molten gold in his hand before stabbing himself, allowing his blood to mix with the gold and form the ring around his finger. Interestingly though, a remnant of this idea remains in the final version of the film.
That makes me think that they actually did shoot it. Like, it's not just a remnant of the concept art, but like they did it because he has the knife in his hand and everything.
You can see Sauron standing with a bloody dagger in his left hand and his newly forged ring on his right. This was likely meant to follow the forging sequence that was later cut. Another reference to this concept was planned for the Council of Elrond, where Gandalf would have mentioned that Sauron's own blood is contained within the ring.
Sauron himself forged the One Ring. Molten gold mixed with his own blood. Contains his life force.
However, this line was also removed, likely due to the omission of the forging scene. Personally, I think it would have been fascinating to see this take on the ring's creation. While the books don't specify exactly how it was forged, Peter Jackson's interpretation would have added an intriguing visual and thematic element to the story.
Could have also added a little more, just even though it's necessarily been in the book, it would make like the common audience understand like the power of the ring and why it wants to get back to its master, like even more understandable, you know, because it's got his life force in it.
At my top pick, the part of the film that, in my opinion, was most affected by cut material and could have been even stronger with additional scenes, especially in the extended edition, the epilogue and ending. Peter Jackson has revealed that they had extensive plans for the epilogue, showing the fates of various characters. For example, there was a scene with Gimli in the glittering caves of
Would have loved the scene that they kind of just saw were drawn after the marriage of Aragorn
caves. Legolas was also meant to have a brief scene wandering through the forest, and one of the biggest omissions from this section was the wedding of Faramir and Eowyn. This scene was actually filmed on a large set, but for years little was known about it. That changed when Miranda Otto, who played Eowyn, shared a behind-the-scenes photo from the wedding on Instagram, confirming its existence. Another cut moment, fondly remembered by the actors playing the hobbits, took place upon their return to the Shire. They were meant to pause on a hill with their horses, overlooking the Shire in a quiet, reflective moment.
So they never even planned to do the scourge.
It's hard to say exactly why so much material from the ending was removed, but the final version still delivers a very satisfying and emotional conclusion. That said, it would have been wonderful to
Nice
see
to
these
see
extra
Legolas
moments
and
tying up
Gimli
each character's journey even more completely. But that wraps up our list. We'd love to hear which one of these scenes you wish made it into the movies and which ones you think we were better left without. If you're interested in more deleted scenes and behind the scenes material, we've put together 3 in-depth videos covering every known deleted moment from the 3 films. Check out the links in the description below. Thank you for watching, and as always, may the orcs be with you.
All right.
The Lord of the Rings trilogy is...
Well, go give that guy Middle Earth Updates a like and subscribe. It's a good channel. See you later.